Good morning, you guys. So I've been grading the assignments that are on the Punnett squares and how genotypes determine phenotypes. And you guys have done a really good job of attempting to do this, even though it's kind of hard because you can't ask me for questions. So there's a few of you that are missing different parts of this process. And so once you figure out those parts that you're missing, you're going to do a really good job on these. So what I wanted to do is do an example Punnett square for you that's like the ones that you're doing. I know there were some examples that we looked at in the notes and some examples that we looked at in the monohybrid cross amoeba sisters video, but let's just go ahead and do this one too if you want the extra help. So what I'm going to do first is while I'm reading the question, I'm going to, I know I need to figure out what are the genotypes of the parent plants here because I'm going to have to put them into these little boxes that are on the outside. So I need to figure that out, and the way I'm going to do that is by looking for clues in the questions. So I'm going to highlight the things that are giving me clues about the genotype in green and the phenotype in purple. And if you want to do this on the document, that's fine with me. So in peas, smooth seeds are dominant to wrinkled seeds. Okay, so that's going to be telling me about the phenotype. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this part right here. And I'm going to turn it purple. And that's going to tell me about what I'm looking at when it comes to the seeds themselves. If a plant with wrinkled seeds and a plant with a heterozygous genotype, okay, so here's another one with a genotype, right? So it's telling me about genes here. So I'm going to make this green. It's telling me about the parents that I have in this particular setup. What percentage of the offspring are likely to have wrinkled seeds? So the question is asking me about the phenotype of the offspring. But in order to answer that question, I have to look at the genotypes of the parents and the phenotypes of the parents. So let's go ahead and figure this out. I'm going to go, oh no, now I changed that to purple, so it's going to change oh no, it's black. Okay, phew. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead right here, and I'm going to figure out the phenotype of the parents. I mean the genotype of the parents. Sorry. Okay, so I've got two parents, so I have to consider both of them. One of the parents, it says if a plant with wrinkled seeds, so I know that this plant has wrinkled seeds. One of the parents has wrinkled seeds. Now, if you remember, we represent, and we can pick any letter here. I think I'm going to pick I guess I'm going to pick H because P's, oh no, I'll pick G. Okay, so I'm going to pick G to do this. Big G is the dominant one, and then little g is the recessive one. So if I have a plant that is heterozygous as one of my parents, I know automatically that I have to have big, oh, I said G, big G, little g. Okay, that's the genotype of one of the parents. The other parent, though, it doesn't tell me homozygous dominant or homozygous recessive or heterozygous. So I have to figure it out based on the phenotype. Now, normally, you can't figure it out based on the phenotype. For example, if you have brown eyes, we can't figure out if your genotype is homozygous dominant, which would mean that you have two genes for brown eyes, or if you have a heterozygous genotype with a dominant and a recessive gene. We can't tell if we just see you with brown eyes. If you go and you get a genetic test, then we would know for sure. We would be able to tell because we would have your genes right there. But the only time you can for sure tell that a genotype is going to be homozygous recessive is if the trait that the person or the plant has is homozygous recessive. So the homozygous recessive trait here, there's only two options for seeds, right? Wrinkled or smooth. Smooth is dominant, so that's going to be big G. So in order to have a little g seeds, you have to have two genes that are for little g. So we actually are going to have the other parent, the one of the wrinkled seeds, is going to be little g, little g. Okay, so you have to figure out the genotypes of the parents before you can move on. Then we don't know which one is the male and which one is the female in this case. So we can't change, we can't put them in the right spot. Remember, it doesn't really change your data if you don't have them in the right spot, but it's just better to always put things grammatically correct. So I'm just going to put big G, little g on the top. I'm going to put one right there in that box and one right here in this box. So that's one of my parents. And then the other one was little g, little g. Okay, so that's how you set up the Punnett square so you can solve for the probability. The next thing you need to do is you're going to fill in these boxes. And it's kind of like when you, I don't know if you've ever looked for a map because people don't use real life maps anymore. We just have our phone maps. But you used to look on a map and you try to find a street and then it would tell you it's in box H4. So you'd have to go to H and 4 and then you just bloop, 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 and you cross and you get right in the middle. And that's where H4 is. So the street's going to be in that block. That's what we're going to do here. We're going to move these ones down. So big G is going to come down to this box and big G is going to come down to this box. So I'm going to go ahead and put big G right here and right here. And where is that big G coming from? It's just coming from this box. Now, it doesn't matter if you do these boxes first and you go across. So this one would bring little g right here. And this one would bring little g right here. Okay, so you're just moving it over into this box. And that way you have two right here. So it's kind of like with chromosomes, you know, the sperm and the egg has to have half of the genes you need. So the sperm's either going to have a big G or a little g from this plant. And from this plant, it's going to have all little g's. So this is how we figure out what's most likely going to be in the sperm and the egg, which is the pollen and the pistil in the flowers. Plants have sex, they're sexually reproducing. Not all plants, but pea plants do. And then here we're going to move these across and down. Now, remember I put the big G first? You could put the big G second and it'll still give you the same data, but you want to put it first just because it's right. So let's move this little g across and move this little g down. So this would be two little g's in this box. And then this one would be moving over and this one would be moving down. So then it's two little g's in this box as well. So that's how you fill out the inside of the Punnett square. Okay, what are we going to do with this data that we just figured out? Well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to figure out the possible genotypes and phenotypes. So here's what I do to figure out the genotypes. I feel like that's easier because when you're looking at this, you don't have this doesn't say wrinkled seeds or round seeds. Wait, did I say smooth seeds? So you have to figure out the genotypes first. Okay, so I'm going to look in here and there is no big G, so I only have two options. I have big G, little g, which is heterozygous, and for that one, the percentage is going to be 50% of the offspring. So when you're looking at a Punnett square, you're only going to have 25%, 50%, 75, 0, or 100. You can't have 10% because there's not 10 different blocks in here. So you have to have, this would be like, it's like quarters. You have 25 cents, 50 cents, 75, $1, right? So we have 25%, 50%, 75%, 100, and then if none of them, so like none of these are big G, so we don't have any percentage for that. I usually don't write down the ones that have no percent, like I just write down what the possibilities are. So we've got big G is going to be 50% of the offspring, or little g is going to be the other 50% of the offspring. Why are we putting just these G's over here? Because that's the genotype, right? Those are the versions of the genes or the alleles that they can have. Now to solve for the phenotypes, okay, we are going to decide how many of these seeds are going to be wrinkled. So we're going to put wrinkled. We need to figure out a percentage. So wrinkled seeds are only going to be present, because it's a recessive trait, if there's two lowercase g's or two recessive genes from one from each parent. So then we're actually going to have, here we're going to have wrinkled seeds, we're going to have them 50% of the time. So in this example, half of the offspring, 25% plus 25% or 50, they're going to have wrinkled seeds. And then the other half is going to have the round seeds or the smooth seeds. So now we can actually answer this question. Okay, so we had to do some work. This is like our how we work out the problem. We have to show our work in math, you know. This is kind of a math thing. It's probability. So then we're going to be able to answer our question. The percentage of wrinkled seeds from these two plants will be half, or 50%. Okay, so that's how we actually get to that answer. I hope this is helpful. It looks like this is kind of a long video, and I'm sorry about that, but I just wanted to make it to kind of help you guys out. Talk to you later. I wanted to add one more tidbit. So sometimes the genotype percentages and the phenotype percentages will match. But let's say that we have big G, little g half of the time, and big G the other half of the time. In that case, you'd have two genotypes, but all of the seeds would be smooth because they all have a dominant gene. So don't count on the genotypes and the phenotypes matching in their percentages, because sometimes they will and sometimes they won't, and you can be right with either of those.